I was about to sleep when my brother texted me. Check your location. You're not at Melissa's house. That's not her address. You need to leave it right now. I stared at my phone screen, the words not making sense. Of course I was at Melissa's house. I'd been here for 3 hours already. We'd eaten pizza, watched movies, painted our nails. Her parents had said goodnight an hour ago. I was literally lying in her guest bedroom with the purple walls and the collection of vintage posters she'd shown me when I arrived. The message had to be a mistake. Maybe Dylan was drunk or his phone had been hacked. My brother wasn't the type to send cryptic warnings at 11:30 at night. He was 23, worked in IT security, and lived 2 hours away in the city. We texted maybe once a week, usually about nothing important. This felt completely out of character. I opened my location sharing app, the one our parents had insisted we all install after our cousin went missing for 8 hours during a college party. The map loaded slowly, the blue dot appearing on a street I didn't recognize. Pinewood Terrace, house number 2847. But Melissa lived on Oakmont Drive. I'd been to her house twice before, both times for birthday parties in middle school. Her address was 156 Oakmont Drive, I was sure of it. I'd even memorized it because it was the same as my locker combination. Another text from Dylan. Natalie, I'm serious. That address is registered to someone named Howard Finch. I just ran it through property records. Where do you think you are? My hands started shaking. I sat up in the bed, looking around the room with new eyes. The purple walls suddenly seemed darker. The vintage posters wrong somehow. One was for a band called The Remnants that I'd never heard of. Another showed a movie from 1987 with actors I didn't recognize. Melissa loved current pop music and superhero movies. Why would she have these old posters? I grabbed my overnight bag from beside the bed and pulled out my phone charger, trying to think clearly. Maybe Melissa's family had moved and she'd forgotten to tell me. People moved all the time. But wouldn't she have mentioned something that major? We sat together at lunch every day. She'd invited me to this sleepover just yesterday, saying her parents were finally letting her have friends over again after she'd gotten her grades up. I texted Dylan back. Maybe they moved recently? I'm definitely at Melissa's house. I came here with her after school. 3 dots appeared immediately, then his response, call me right now. Don't say anything out loud, just listen. I pressed the call button with trembling fingers. Dylan answered on the first ring, his voice tight and controlled. Nat, I need you to stay calm and trust me. I've been tracking your location all night because Mom asked me to check on you. Your location has been at that Pinewood address since 6 p.m. I thought the app was glitching, so I cross-referenced property records. Howard Finch, age 48, owns that house. Purchased it 8 years ago. No other occupants listed. But I'm at Melissa's house, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I came here with her. Her mom answered the door. We ate dinner with her parents. They're upstairs sleeping right now. Natalie, listen to me very carefully. Dylan's voice had that sharp edge he got when he was trying not to panic. I need you to describe exactly what happened from the moment school ended today. I closed my eyes, trying to reconstruct the afternoon. Melissa had found me at my locker after last period. She'd been excited about the sleepover, said her dad was making his famous pizza from scratch. We'd walked to the parking lot together, but we hadn't taken the bus. Melissa said her mom was picking us up because they lived too far from school for the bus route. A blue sedan had been waiting, a woman with dark hair behind the wheel. She'd waved at us, smiling. I'd gotten in the back seat with Melissa. We'd driven for maybe 20 minutes, talking about the history test we'd bombed. The woman driving had been quiet, occasionally glancing at us in the rearview mirror. Now that I thought about it, I'd never gotten a good look at her face. The woman driving, I said slowly. I didn't really see her clearly. And the man who answered the door when we got here, he was wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He said he was Melissa's dad, but you never actually confirmed it was her parents. Dylan finished. Nat, where's Melissa right now? I stood up, my legs unsteady. She went to get us water like 10 minutes ago. Said she'd be right back. The silence on the other end of the line lasted too long. Then Dylan spoke. His words measured and careful. I need you to look around that room. Really look. Tell me what you see. I turned slowly, examining everything with new attention. The bed was made with a floral comforter that seemed too mature for a teenage girl. The dresser had a layer of dust on it, like it hadn't been used in a while. The closet door was slightly open, and I could see it was empty inside. No clothes, no shoes, nothing. My stomach turned cold. On the nightstand was a framed photo. I picked it up with shaking hands. It showed a family, 2 parents, and a teenage girl, all smiling at the camera. But the girl in the photo wasn't Melissa. She was younger, maybe 13 or 14, with lighter hair and different features, and the photo quality looked old, like it had been taken years ago. Dylan, there's a picture here. It's not Melissa. I don't know who these people are. Get out of that house right now. His voice was sharp, urgent. Don't worry about being polite. Don't say goodbye. Just grab your bag and leave. I'm calling the police and sending them to that address, but you need to get out now. I grabbed my overnight bag and moved toward the bedroom door. My hand was on the knob when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was coming up the stairs. Heavy footsteps, definitely not Melissa's light tread. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Someone's coming. I breathed into the phone. Dylan, someone's coming up the stairs. Is there a window? He asked immediately. Can you get out through a window? I looked at the window across the room. It faced the backyard, probably a 10-foot drop to the ground below. But the window had bars on it. Decorative-looking bars that I'd barely noticed before, thinking they were just part of the house's architectural style. Now they looked like what they really were, a cage. There are bars on the window. I can't get out. The footsteps stopped outside the door. The knob turned slowly. Natalie, are you still awake? It was a man's voice. The same voice that had greeted us at the door hours ago. The one I'd thought was Melissa's father. But now I could hear something off about it. Something forced and artificial in the friendly tone. I thought you might want some extra blankets. It gets cold in this room at night. I couldn't speak. My voice was completely gone. My throat closed with fear. Dylan was saying something in my ear, urgent instructions I couldn't process. The door opened. The man stood in the doorway, and this time I saw his face clearly. He was probably in his late 40s, with graying hair and glasses. He looked like someone's dad, like a teacher or an accountant. Completely ordinary except for his eyes, which were flat and calculating as they fixed on me. You're on the phone, he observed calmly. That's not ideal. Who are you talking to? I backed against the far wall, holding my phone up like it was a weapon. My brother. He's calling the police right now. They're on their way. The man's expression didn't change. Your brother Dylan, the IT security analyst who lives in Seattle? Yes, we know about Dylan. We've been planning this for quite a while, Natalie. Your whole family's schedules, your routines, your relationships. Melissa's been very helpful in gathering information. The room tilted. What do you mean? Where's Melissa? Melissa is exactly where she's supposed to be. Downstairs talking to my wife about all the fun things you girls are going to do together. She's a very dedicated friend, your Melissa. Very willing to help her family when they need her. He stepped into the room, and I saw he was holding something behind his back. You see, Melissa is our daughter. Our real daughter. Not the girl in that photo. That was our first daughter, Rebecca. She ran away 6 years ago when she was 15. Broke her mother's heart. We've been trying to fill that emptiness ever since, but it's been difficult. Rebecca was so special. So perfect. We thought if we could just find the right replacement, someone with her same spirit and intelligence, we could be whole again. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what he was saying. Melissa was their daughter. But Melissa and I had been friends since freshman year. We'd had classes together, eaten lunch together every day. She'd told me about her family, her annoying little brother, her parents' strict rules. All of that had been a lie. The police are coming, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My brother sent them this address. They'll be here any minute. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure they will. But by the time they arrive, you'll just be a teenage girl staying over at your friend's house. A friend whose family you've known for years, whose house you've been to multiple times before tonight. That's what all your texts and social media posts will show. Melissa's been very thorough about establishing that history. Screenshots of conversations you never had, photos of parties you never attended. Digital footprints are so easy to create when you know what you're doing. He brought his hand from behind his back, revealing a syringe. This will just help you relax, make you more comfortable while we sort everything out. You're going to stay with us for a while, help us be a family again. If you cooperate, if you can learn to be the daughter we need, everything will be fine. Rebecca fought us at first too, but eventually she understood. Or she would have, if she hadn't ruined everything by running. My phone was still at my ear, Dylan's voice shouting instructions I could barely hear over the roaring in my head. The man took another step toward me. I looked around desperately for anything I could use as a weapon. The lamp on the nightstand was too far away. My overnight bag was near the door, out of reach. The only thing close to me was the framed photograph. I grabbed it and threw it at his face with all my strength. The glass shattered against his forehead, making him stumble back with a curse. Blood ran down from a cut above his eyebrow. I ran for the door, but he recovered faster than I expected. His hand caught my arm, fingers digging in painfully. I screamed as loud as I could, a sound that tore from my throat with desperate force. "Richard, she's being difficult!" he shouted toward the stairs. "Bring Melissa up here!" I twisted in his grip, trying to break free, but he was much stronger. He pushed me against the wall, the syringe still in his other hand, moving toward my neck. Then I heard something that made both of us freeze. Sirens. Multiple sirens, getting closer by the second. The man's face changed, fury replacing the calm calculation. "You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? We spent months planning this. Months of Melissa building trust with you, learning everything about you. This was supposed to be perfect. Let her go, Howard." A woman's voice came from the hallway. I looked over to see the woman from the car, the one who'd pretended to be Melissa's mother. But her face was different now, twisted with anger and something else. Fear. "The police are here. It's over. Let her go and maybe we can salvage something." "It's not over." Howard's grip on my arm tightened. "We can still make this work. We can explain. We can— Dad, stop!" Another voice. I looked past the woman and saw Melissa standing at the top of the stairs. But this wasn't the Melissa I knew. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. "Dad, please, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep lying. I can't keep hurting people." "Melissa, go to your room," the woman said sharply. "This doesn't concern you." "Yes, it does." Melissa's voice broke. "It concerns me because I'm the one who has to live with what we've done. I'm the one who has to pretend to be friends with people just so you can try to replace Rebecca. But nobody can replace Rebecca. She's gone and she's never coming back, and kidnapping random girls isn't going to change that." The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in alternating colors. I heard car doors slamming, voices shouting commands. "Police! We have the house surrounded! Come out with your hands visible!" Howard's hand loosened on my arm, just slightly. It was enough. I yanked free and ran for the stairs, stumbling past Melissa and the woman. I nearly fell going down the steps, but caught myself on the railing. The front door was locked with a deadbolt. and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn it. Then it was open and I was running outside into the cold night air. Police officers were everywhere, weapons drawn, shouting at me to get down, to show my hands. I dropped to my knees on the driveway, holding my phone above my head. One officer ran forward and pulled me behind a patrol car. "Are you Natalie Armstrong?" she asked, her hand on my shoulder. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to form words. My whole body was shaking uncontrollably. The officer was talking into her radio, calling for an ambulance, reporting that the victim was secured. Other officers moved toward the house, their voices commanding the occupants to come out. I watched as the front door opened slowly. The woman came out first, hands raised, face blank. Then Howard, blood still running down his face from where the frame had cut him. He was handcuffed immediately, forced to the ground. Both of them were read their rights while I sat behind the police car, wrapped in a blanket someone had put around my shoulders. "Natalie!" Dylan's voice came from my phone, which I was still somehow holding. I'd forgotten I was still connected to the call. "Nat, are you okay? Talk to me." "I'm okay," I managed to say. "I'm out. I'm safe. Thank God. Thank God. Don't hang up, okay? Stay on the line with me until Mom and Dad get there." I called them as soon as I called 911. "They're on their way." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Another figure emerged from the house, escorted by 2 officers. Melissa walked slowly, head down, hands behind her back. As she passed the patrol car where I was sitting, she looked at me. Our eyes met for just a moment. There was no defiance in her expression, no anger, just exhaustion and something that might have been relief. The officer with me asked if I needed medical attention, and I shook my head again. I wasn't physically hurt, just shattered in ways I couldn't yet articulate. More police arrived, then an ambulance, then detectives in plain clothes. One of them, a woman with short gray hair, crouched beside me and introduced herself as Detective Lydia Reeves. She asked if I was ready to answer some questions, her voice gentle but professional. I told her everything, starting from when Melissa had invited me to the sleepover. My voice was mechanical, reciting facts without emotion because feeling anything would break me completely. Detective Reeves recorded everything on her phone, nodding occasionally, asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she sat back on her heels and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Natalie, you need to know something. This isn't the first time. The Finches, that's their real name, have been under investigation for months. We've had suspicions, but never enough evidence. Melissa, their daughter, she contacted us 3 weeks ago. Said she wanted out, that she couldn't live like this anymore. She's been cooperating with us since then, but we needed solid evidence of an actual attempt. Tonight was supposed to be that evidence." I stared at her. "You mean, you knew? You knew they were going to try to take me?" "We knew they were planning something. Melissa told us they'd selected a target, a girl from her school who fit their profile. But she couldn't give us your name until tonight because they only told her this afternoon. We had units ready to move as soon as we got the location confirmation from your brother's call. You were never in as much danger as you felt. We were monitoring the situation the entire time." The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did, and I felt a surge of anger cut through the fear and shock. "So I was bait? You used me as bait without telling me?" Detective Reeves's expression hardened slightly. "We couldn't tell you because we couldn't risk you acting differently. The Finches are extremely careful, extremely paranoid. If Melissa had warned you ahead of time or if you'd known we were watching, they would have sensed something was wrong. They would have aborted the plan and we'd be back to square one. Without evidence of an actual crime, we couldn't arrest them, and they would have just picked another victim eventually. I could have been hurt. That man had a syringe. He was going to drug me. And we were 30 seconds away from breaching the door when you ran out. You were never out of our sight. We had thermal imaging showing us exactly where everyone in that house was positioned. The moment you were in actual danger, we would have intervened." My parents arrived then, my mom's SUV pulling up behind the police cars with a screech of brakes. She was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped, running toward me. My dad was right behind her. They both grabbed me, and that's when I finally started crying. Real, body-shaking sobs that I couldn't control. My mom was saying something over and over, words I couldn't make out through my own crying. My dad was talking to Detective Reeves, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. I heard fragments. Consent, minor, lawyers, absolutely unacceptable. Dylan was still on the phone, and my dad took it from me, speaking to him briefly before ending the call. The next few hours were a blur of statements and medical checks and victim services coordinators. We were taken to the police station, where I had to repeat my story multiple times to different people. Each telling made it feel less real, like I was describing something that had happened to someone else. My parents sat with me through all of it, my mom holding my hand, my dad's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Around 3 a.m., Detective Reeves came back with new information. The Finches had been doing this for years, ever since their biological daughter Rebecca had run away. Rebecca had been found eventually, living with friends in another state. She'd refused to come home, had filed for emancipation at 16, and had cut off all contact with her parents. The loss had broken something in Howard and his wife Diane. They'd become convinced that they could recreate what they'd lost by finding girls who reminded them of Rebecca and molding them into replacement daughters. Melissa wasn't their biological daughter at all. She was their first successful abduction, taken 7 years ago when she was 11 years old. Her real name was Melissa Thornton, and she'd been reported missing from a mall in another state. The Finches had kept her isolated for the first year, homeschooling her, systematically breaking down her identity and rebuilding her as their daughter. By the time they enrolled her in public school, she'd been so thoroughly conditioned that she played the role perfectly. But Melissa had never forgotten who she really was. She'd just learned to survive by pretending. And over the years, she'd watched them try this with other girls. Most of the attempts had failed before reaching the point I'd gotten to. The girls would become suspicious, or their parents would intervene, or the Finches would decide the target wasn't suitable. But there had been 2 others who'd made it as far as I did. One had escaped after 3 days. The other had been held for 2 weeks before managing to get a message to the outside world. Detective Reeves showed us photos of those girls, now young women, both still dealing with the trauma of what had happened to them. Looking at their faces, I saw my own fear reflected back at me. We could have been sisters in our shared experience of being selected, evaluated, and nearly absorbed into the Finches' delusion. Melissa is the key to putting them away for a very long time, Detective Reeves said. She's agreed to testify about everything. The abduction, the conditioning, the other attempts. With her testimony and what happened tonight, we can charge them with multiple counts of kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, child abuse, and conspiracy. They'll never get out of prison. What happens to Melissa? My mom asked. She's a victim too. She's 18 now, legally an adult. We're working with her to locate her biological family, but after 7 years, that's complicated. She'll need extensive therapy, probably for the rest of her life. But she's choosing to do the right thing now, even though it means testifying against the only family she's known for most of her childhood. I thought about Melissa standing at the top of the stairs, her face pale and exhausted, telling her father to stop. She could have stayed silent. She could have let it happen. But she'd spoken up, even knowing it would destroy the only life she had. That took a kind of courage I wasn't sure I possessed. We left the police station as the sun was coming up. My dad drove us home in silence. My mom in the passenger seat, me stretched across the back seat wrapped in the blanket from the police. I couldn't stop shaking, even though I wasn't cold. My phone buzzed with texts from Dylan, checking on me every few minutes. Friends from school had somehow heard what happened, and my social media was exploding with messages I couldn't bring myself to read. At home, my mom made me take a shower while she stayed in the bathroom, sitting on the closed toilet lid and talking to me through the curtain. Just normal conversation about nothing important, like what we should have for breakfast and whether we needed to go grocery shopping. Mundane things that felt impossibly far from the reality of what had just happened. I got in bed in my own room, in my own house, and couldn't sleep despite being exhausted beyond measure. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Howard's face, saw the syringe in his hand, saw Melissa's blank expression as she'd led me into that house. My mom eventually came and lay down next to me, not saying anything, just being there. School was impossible for the next week. My parents kept me home and nobody argued. The media picked up the story within days, and suddenly the Finches' house was on every news channel. Reporters called our house constantly until my dad changed our number. The school sent a counselor to our house to talk to me about what had happened. She was nice but useless. How do you counsel someone about being selected as a replacement for a dead girl by a family who'd already successfully kidnapped one child? There was no handbook for that. Dylan drove down from Seattle and stayed for a few days. He didn't try to talk about what happened. Instead, he set up a new phone for me with maximum security settings, showed me how to lock down my social media, and taught me about digital footprints and how to protect myself online. Practical things that gave me back a tiny sense of control. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after it happened. My parents hired a victim advocate who explained what would happen, what I'd need to do, how the system worked. I'd have to testify eventually, when the case went to trial. But for the hearing, my written statement would be enough. Melissa's testimony was the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. She appeared via video link, her face pixelated to protect her identity. I watched from the victim's gallery as she calmly, methodically described 7 years of captivity. The way the Finches had systematically erased Melissa Thornton and created their new daughter. The other girls they'd targeted over the years, the ones who'd escaped and the ones who'd never made it that far. The way they'd used her to befriend me, to learn my schedule, to identify my vulnerabilities. Her voice never wavered. She recited facts like she was reading a grocery list, completely detached from the horror of what she was describing. I realized she'd had to detach to survive. Feeling the full weight of what had been done to her would have destroyed her. The Finches sat at the defense table, both of them looking smaller and older than I remembered. Diane cried throughout the testimony, but Howard remained expressionless. Once he turned and looked directly at me. I forced myself not to look away. I wasn't his victim. I'd escaped. The judge ruled there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial and denied bail, citing flight risk and danger to the community. Howard and Diane were remanded to custody. As they were let out, Diane turned and screamed at Melissa's video image on the courtroom monitor. "You ungrateful little bitch! After everything we did for you, we saved you, we gave you a real family!" The bailiffs had to physically restrain her as she tried to lunge at the screen. Howard just walked out silently, his face still blank. After the hearing, the victim advocate asked if I wanted to meet Melissa in person. She was waiting in a conference room, willing to talk if I was ready. I wasn't sure I was, but I said yes anyway. Melissa was sitting at a table when I came in, wearing jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before. Her hair was shorter, cut in a bob that made her look different. Older somehow. More like herself, whoever that was. "Hi," she said. Just that one word, tentative and uncertain. "Hi," I responded, sitting across from her. We looked at each other in silence for a moment. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. I should have found another way. Should have stopped them years ago." "You were 11 when they took you," I said. "You were a kid. You survived the only way you could. That doesn't make what I did to you okay. I brought you into that house. I lied to you for months. I helped them pick you because you fit their profile for what Rebecca used to be like. Smart, kind, trusting. I knew what they were going to do, and I still did it. Her voice cracked on the last words. Why did you finally stop them? She was quiet for a long moment. Because I saw myself in you. The way you trusted me so completely. The way you had no idea what was coming. 7 years ago, I was you. I went home with someone I thought was a friend's mom, and then everything I knew was gone. I couldn't let them do that to another person. Not again. Not when I had the power to stop it. Detective Reeves said you contacted the police weeks ago. I did, but it took me that long to work up the courage. And even then, I almost backed out a dozen times. The Finches are the only family I remember clearly. My real family, my biological parents, they're like characters in a story someone told me once. I don't really remember them anymore. Choosing to betray the Finches meant choosing to have nobody. What happens to you now? I asked. I don't know. My biological parents, they want to meet me. But I'm 18, so it's my choice. I can try to reconnect with them, or I can start fresh somewhere new. The prosecutor said there's a victims fund that will help with therapy and housing and education. I can try to build a normal life, whatever that means. Do you remember your real name? Before they changed it? She smiled sadly. Melissa is my real name. That's the strange part. They didn't even change it. They just changed everything else about me. My last name, my history, my personality. But they kept Melissa because Diane's mother was named Melissa. It was supposed to be an honor. We talked for another hour. Not about the trauma or the case or what was going to happen at trial. Just about normal things. She asked about school, about classes we'd had together, about teachers and other students. I told her about the calculus exam we'd both missed, about the drama club play tryouts next month. She listened like someone hearing about a life that could have been hers in another universe. When we left, she hugged me. It was brief and awkward, but genuine. Thank you for not hating me, she said. I hate what happened, I told her, but I don't hate you. You're a victim too. She nodded, not quite believing me, but accepting the words anyway. I watched her walk away with her victim advocate, and I realized I might never see her again. Our lives had intersected at their darkest point, but now we'd both move forward on separate paths. The trial took 8 months to happen. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through everything that had happened that night. The defense attorney tried to suggest I'd misunderstood the situation, that the Finches had simply been trying to help when I panicked unnecessarily, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bars on the windows, the syringe, the history of other victims, Melissa's testimony. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Howard was sentenced to 35 years. Diane got 28 years. They'd both be elderly if they ever got out. And with their appeals likely to fail, they probably never would. The day the sentence was handed down, I allowed myself to feel relief for the first time since that night. It wasn't closure exactly. There was no magical moment where everything made sense or the trauma disappeared. But it was justice. And that mattered. I started therapy, working with a specialist in abduction and trauma. She helped me understand that what I was feeling, the hypervigilance and trust issues and nightmares, were all normal responses to an abnormal situation. She taught me coping strategies and helped me process not just what happened, but what could have happened. I graduated high school on time, something I wasn't sure I'd manage in the aftermath. Dylan came to the ceremony, sitting with my parents in the front row. I'd chosen a college 3 hours away, far enough to feel independent but close enough to come home when I needed to. My parents had wanted me to stay local, but they eventually understood I needed to prove to myself that I could still move forward, still trust the world enough to exist in it. Melissa sent me a card for graduation. Inside was a note. Thank you for being brave enough to survive. I'm trying to do the same. Starting community college in the fall. Maybe we'll both make it after all. I kept the card in my desk drawer, a reminder that survival takes many forms. The following year, on the anniversary of that night, I went back to Pinewood Terrace. The house where the Finches had lived was empty now, a for sale sign in the front yard. I sat in my car across the street and looked at it, trying to reconcile this ordinary suburban house with the nightmare it had contained. A woman walking her dog passed by and waved. A kid rode past on a bicycle. Normal life continued around this place where something terrible had almost happened to me. I realized that's what recovery looked like. Not a dramatic transformation or a moment of catharsis, but just the slow accumulation of normal days. Days where I went to class and complained about professors and ate bad cafeteria food with friends who didn't know my story. Days where what happened to me was part of my history but not the sum total of my identity. I texted Dylan, at the house. I'm okay, just needed to see it. His response came immediately. Proud of you. Call if you need me. I started the car and drove away. Behind me, the house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, and then I turned a corner and it was gone. 2 years after the trial, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "It's Melissa." I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity won. Inside was a brief message and a photo. I wanted you to know I found them. My biological family. It's strange and hard, and sometimes I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be. But I'm trying. This is me with my little sister. I was 11 when I was taken. She was 4. She doesn't remember me, but we're getting to know each other now. Thank you for saving my life by almost losing yours. I know that sounds backwards, but it's true. If you hadn't been there that night, if I hadn't had to watch them try to hurt you, I might never have found the courage to stop them. You gave me permission to choose myself. I hope you're choosing yourself too. The photo showed Melissa, looking relaxed and genuinely happy, with her arm around a teenage girl. They had the same smile. I wrote back, I'm glad you found them. I'm choosing myself every day. It's getting easier. We didn't become friends. Our connection was too bound up in trauma for that. But we checked in occasionally, brief messages updating each other on our progress. She finished community college and transferred to a university studying social work. I chose psychology, wanting to understand the mechanisms of manipulation and control that had almost destroyed us both. 5 years after that night, I did my graduate thesis on family abduction cases and the long-term psychological effects on victims. I interviewed dozens of survivors, including Melissa, who'd become an advocate for missing children. My research was published in a journal. Small recognition, but it felt like taking something terrible and transforming it into something useful. I still have nightmares sometimes. Still check locks obsessively and feel my heart race when I'm in an unfamiliar place. Still struggle with trusting people too quickly and then pulling back when they get too close. Trauma doesn't have an expiration date, but I also have a life, a career helping other survivors, friends who know my story and accept all the ways it's shaped me, a brother who texts me every night at 11:30, our shared ritual of checking in that started the night he saved my life, my parents who learned to let me move forward at my own pace instead of trying to protect me from a danger that had already passed. And somewhere in another city, Melissa has a life too. She reconnected with her biological family. She helps other victims find their way back from captivity. She exists in the world as herself, whoever that is, after everything she survived. We're both proof that predators don't get the final word, that survival is possible and recovery is real, even when it's slow and incomplete and imperfect. The Finches tried to steal futures, but they failed. We took our futures back, piece by piece, day by day. That's the only ending that matters. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.